Okay, hello. I'm here live with Daniel Cuming,
What's up, everybody?
and we're chilling at a beautiful location. We're actually embarking on a water fast together, and I think it would be a really good opportunity to interview this man because he's very inspirational. I think he's got a lot to share and a lot to learn from. But yeah, just to begin, I think I could just ask, just to learn a little bit about you and your upbringing, your spiritual journey, how you've gotten to where you are today, basically, where it all began for you.
Yeah, cool. Well, yeah, thanks, brother. I really appreciate you having me, and I appreciate what you just said. And yeah, so for those who don't know me, my name's Daniel Cuming. I'm a yoga teacher here on the Sunshine Coast. I also currently run yoga teacher trainings, more so in Bali, and there will be some on the Sunshine Coast starting next year, but obviously everything's on hold for the time being. So I got into yoga, I guess probably about 8 or 9 years ago, because so if we're going to start from the start, I was always a bit of a weird kid. I was always interested in, I guess, esoteric stuff and just different states of being, and I guess looking at the world with a sense of wonder. I was really interested in the possibilities of the world, and read a lot of mythological books and played a lot of like RPG video games and stuff when I was in school when I was a kid. And yeah, as time went on, I started delving into that stuff myself, and I was like, there must be something more to the world. So I started reading books about mythology and esotericism, ancient cultures, concepts of magic, and then obviously that led to meditation. I got into Tai Chi and Kung Fu and martial arts in general probably about 10 years ago. That led me on a big journey of, self-discovery of what the body is capable of, and finding systems of movement, and finding like the power of the breath, I think, was the bigger thing in Tai Chi, because it was very movement with breath, and it just opened a lot up for me. And then as time went on, I dabbled in other martial arts. I'm back to Kung Fu now, but a different style. But along that journey, I ended up becoming a fitness trainer and a personal trainer, and I was hosting fitness classes and things like that. I moved up the Sunshine Coast probably about 6-7 years ago from Brisbane, and was teaching stuff up here. And I went on a bit of a journey where I decided that I wanted to buy a house, and I was still doing the fitness training, and I ended up getting a full-time job for about a year, saving up a deposit to buy a house. So I saved up nearly 20 grand. And then I ended up getting really depressed. I just was personal training people in the morning. I was working full-time sales job all day, and then I was teaching classes in the evening. And really the only thing that was bringing me joy at that time was teaching classes in the evening. And I ended up getting really, really down, really depressed, and I couldn't understand why, because my life had ticked all the boxes, and I was about to buy a house. I was about to get approved just by myself as well, which is a huge feat. And then I went for a run on the beach one night, and because I was obviously doing a lot of fitness training myself in my spare time, and I rolled my ankle, and I couldn't walk for like 6 months. So I couldn't do all the regular fitness training I was doing. I took some time off work. I had to get back into meditation because I was already so depressed that I needed something to help me, because I was feeling so down. And so I turned back to my Tai Chi and meditation stuff. And I did a meditation one day, and I took about a week or two off work. And I remember looking in the mirror, cleaning my bathroom, and seeing myself reflected in the mirror with this big grin on my face. And I was like, why are you so happy? You're literally cleaning your bathroom. But there was just something in slowing down. And at that time as well, I was starting to get into yoga because I couldn't really do much else. So I was doing some YouTube yoga stuff that I found online. And then when I could walk better, I started to go to studios and classes. And I was like, this is what I'm meant to do. This is what I'm going to do. So I quit my full-time job. I flew to Bali and did a month yoga teacher training. And then I went to Europe and just backpacked through Europe and met these amazing people all throughout Europe. And so I went to Iceland as well. Iceland is amazing if you've never been. Did that for a few months, and then came back to the Sunshine Coast with no money, no job, and I just started teaching yoga, and it was the best thing I ever did. And I just haven't looked back. So now I guess my mission really is to, help people connect with themselves and that part of themselves that makes them really happy. But yeah, create a sense of wonder for people as well. Like I really want to help people refine their sense of wonder through lots of different techniques and modalities. So.
That's brilliant. That's an epic journey. For me, it was something similar. Just like the whole depression thing really started everything for me. Going down a different path and figuring out, there's got to be more. But with the yoga, so you wanted to do it because, you did it because you had an injury and it was kind of just something you could do. But obviously there was something about yoga, it stuck. Like why did it stick? Why, like you could have, when your injury was healed, you could have gone back to fitness training. Why did yoga stick so strongly with you? And you're obviously continuing to teach it today.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think the biggest thing about yoga is I feel like it's almost a gateway to, I guess, exploring your own psychology, but I guess also things are what you call spiritual. I guess with fitness training, right? So if I was teaching a fitness class and I drop a little bit of philosophy or talk about the mind or even, something esoteric, people would just look at me like I was crazy. But it's acceptable within a yoga class to talk about spiritual things or to talk about delving deeper into yourself outside of the body. And I think that was a big thing for me. So there was definitely that aspect of some of the teachers were really inspiring that I went to classes of, and they talk about I remember I had this Ashtanga teacher that I got into early, and she was talking about astrology. So she'd talk about what the planets are doing at the midway through the class, and sometimes I'd be like, wow, that makes so much sense. But it was just interesting. Like I love all that sort of stuff, and it was just really interesting to have that connect with what I was doing at the time. And especially when you're in a yoga flow or in that physical state, you're much more open to receiving different things as well. But also there was something about yoga so fitness training is often quite repetitive, right? So you might do like 50 squats and 50 push-ups and this, and like even though you can make it really interesting, it does get very repetitive. And I don't know, there's something about yoga that leaves space for you to think, but yet in that space you feel more than think. So with the vinyasa flow, it's very focused on the breath. So you're focusing on the inhale, the exhale, and the transitions and movement. And it does leave you space to get stuck in your head, but for some reason in that state of being, like you do get stuck in your head sometimes, but you find that space and you find that peace and you find that insight. Like I would have issues and problems, and I'd go to a yoga class, and I don't know, usually like a lot of them either in the middle of the flow while I was holding a pose, or at the end in Shavasana when I was laying down relaxing, the insight would just come in. So I feel like yoga is a safe space to explore yourself and whatever is happening within yourself. And I think the safe space is the key because you're constantly moving during yoga. When stuff comes up, you move with it, so it doesn't move you. So I think that's an important piece as well, because usually if like we're getting stuck in our head and things are happening and thoughts and stuff, emotions are happening, it's moving us, it's pushing, pulling us, and we're stuck, and sometimes we just curl up into a ball because we don't really know what else to do. But if you're doing some movement like yoga, if that experiences, you can actually breathe and move it, so you're moving with it, but then you can almost kind of release it or just choose to roll with it and ride it rather than like. So I think that's the thing that I've noticed now, learning how to let things move through you instead of move you, that you don't want to move you.
With yoga, it's obviously a lot more than just physical movements. I actually don't know a lot about yoga myself, which I would actually love if you could actually explain and talk about, or give like a rough, talk about what is yoga. Like it's deeper than that, than just physical. It's a philosophy, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So there's a lot of different branches of yoga. I think what we consider yoga these days would be hatha yoga, and that only really became popular probably somewhere between 100 to 200 years ago. It kind of became what it is now in the Western world. Like some practices like Hatha yoga obviously extends much further back, but as we know it, the asana practice, because the thing is, like for example, there's a system of yoga. There's lots of different systems, but one of them explores what they call the 8 limbs of yoga, and that's a good example of how small postures are in yoga. So one of the 8 limbs is asana. So asana is posture, so the physical posture. So it just shows that, you know, we've taken this one thing, you know, from a whole huge spectrum and be like, I really like the movement. But it's because it's the first thing, because that's what yoga is as well, right? So you start to explore your more subtle bodies. And that's what happens in time, because initially your least subtle is your physical, because if something hits you, you're going to feel it, right? Yeah. You experience the physical quite noticeably. But then you've got the mental and emotional, and you've got like your more intuitive, subtle senses, and that's what yoga helps you to delve into more and more. And that's what you usually start with, the posture. But the idea behind yoga was to move the body, release like excess tension and energy, so you can tap into those more subtle streams of energy, or those more subtle experiences. Because if anyone's even just gone to a yoga class, you'll notice that at the end of the class, you can't really not feel different. You know, especially as long as you're doing the postures, you're doing the breathing, especially. Even if you just do the breathing, if you went to a class and you didn't do any of the postures, you just sat there and every time they said inhale, you inhale. Every time they said exhale, you exhale, and just stayed there, you would still feel different at the end of it. So the breath is the key. And that, as time goes on, I mean, you've just done a 10-day rebirthing breathwork thing, so I don't need to talk to you about how important the breath is. Yeah. But I think the breath is the key, because in fitness classes as well, they don't often talk about the breath. Whereas in yoga, and especially in vinyasa yoga, the breath is key. And that is, the breath is everything. I mean, like, it's the most important thing, right? Like, you take your first breath when you're born, and you take your last breath. Everything is just a big inhale and an exhale.
Do you know much about the history? Like, there's 8. You said there are 8 branches. Like, what are those branches?
No, so the 8 limbs of yoga is just, so you've got like pranayama, you've got asana. It's just, like, so you've got the yamas and niyamas. It's just different aspects. So you've got, like, one branch is about the breath, one branch is about subtle energy, one branch is about the postures, one branch is about the philosophy and things like that. So it just means that there's, like, it sums up yoga in their way. So that's the Ashtanga system. But there's Tantra, there's Kundalini, there's like a lot of different, so there's a lot of different branches, but a lot of it branches off from Tantra. Okay. Yeah, so from Tantric yoga.
What do you teach?
So I guess I teach Vinyasa yoga as a general class practice. I guess my viewpoint is quite tantric. So I really like
the breath, right? That's tantric is breath.
So tantric is just a general branch in philosophy. Okay. So there's that's the thing as well. So like it kind of branches off. So tantra also like branches off into lots of different avenues. But I guess mine would be considered. I really like it's called non-dualistic tantra. So it's not so much seeing as things as good and bad. It's just seeing everything is a spectrum, right? It's because it's like there's this writer, I think he's passed away now, called Aleister Crowley, and he said a spacesuit in space is good, but a spacesuit in the Sahara Desert is evil. Yeah. So it's all relative. So, you know, I guess this can definitely be debated, but nothing is really good or evil. It's how it's relative to whatever else is going on, and also what you do with it as well. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So I guess like the tantra that I kind of come from is very all about non-dualism, and just exploring and seeing things as infinite potential as well. So this idea that reality is kind of constantly in flux and can constantly change, and you can I guess using your willpower, different kind of techniques, you can tap into that and either receive or put ideas into the void, into the matrix of existence. But my focus now, like obviously I'm running Ritual Embodiment with it, which is a level 1 yoga teacher training program, which is vinyasa based, but also on top of that, because I launched Rune Yoga at Woodford Folk Festival about a year ago.
Okay, cool. And I want to ask about that as well. Are the different modalities that you include, like I've been to different yoga classes, and like it's different every single time.
Yeah.
And they said like there's yin yoga, or there's like or yang yoga, or different stuff like that. Is that connected to the 8 limbs, or is that's just
not so much. So yin and yang yoga would still be classed under what they call asana. So asana is the postures. So it's just different types of postures. So yeah, so it's a good question though, because a lot of people might not know what that means. So yin yoga is generally holding postures for a longer period of time.
Okay.
Yeah, so usually with yin, you would set yourself up in a posture, and you would hold that posture for about 3 or 4 minutes. Sometimes shorter, sometimes even longer. I've seen ones where you can hold for 10, 15 minutes for a posture. So that's more kind of like muscle and myofascial release, and it's very just sitting in the posture. Whereas yang yoga, I guess, would be more like hatha vinyasa, which is you spend less time in each pose, and they're quite fiery poses. So they're kind of like standing poses, energetic poses. Okay. Whereas yin is much more set up in a pose and surrender to the pose and just release. Yeah.
And each pose is connected to some divine or to do with philosophy. Is that true? Like
well, originally I think most of the, if not all the poses, were connected to the mythology. So you've got Hanumanasana, which is basically splits. So you've got splits. People call it splits, but it's called Hanumanasana, and that's one of the postures that in the mythology, Hanuman, which is like the monkey god, that he would do. And then you've got Shiva. So there's all different, like there's dancing Shiva. There's all these different poses that have reference to the mythology. So like there's Virabhadrasana 1, Virabhadrasana 2, and Virabhadrasana 3. Which are Warrior 1, Warrior 2, and Warrior 3.
I see.
But they're all based around how the Shiva's movements when he basically crashes a party and cuts off all the gods' heads and kills the other gods. So apparently, I can't remember the actual mythology, but Shiva didn't get invited to a party with all the gods, and then he shows up, does Warrior 1, stabs somebody, Warrior 2, cuts someone else's head off, all this sort of stuff, and it eventually kills all the gods. After that, he's like, probably shouldn't have done that. Finds some animals, gets animals' heads, puts them on all the other gods' heads, and that's why a lot of the Hindu gods have animal heads now, because Shiva did yoga.
It's amazing. Like yoga is so rich. It is so like dense. There's so I never knew that there was so much to yoga than just the physical aspect.
So much, bro.
Yeah. And so when you're actually teaching a class, you said you like to, you feel like you can open up and talk about, different modalities or spiritual ideas or concepts. Can you share a little bit about that? Like what other modalities have you found and connected it to yoga?
Yeah, so I guess, the first thing that is more universal is the idea of mindfulness, and the idea that we are not our thoughts, because a lot of us, we get stuck in our thoughts and we just get captivated by them, whether they're good or bad. Often, we're pre-designed to focus on negative a lot of the time. Not everyone, but and that's quite useful in situations. So, for example, right in prehistoric age, you might have like a lion under a tree and the tree is full of apples. Now, if you were predisposed to focus on the positive, you'd be like, hey, there's apples there. Everything's going to be great. I'm just going to waltz over and get the apples. The lion will be very nice to me. But no, you would end up dead. So that would actually, like, out of the gene pool, probably be cut out. So it helps to focus on the lion than on the negative, because it will keep us alive. Now, in this day and age, we don't have... we have lions, but everything becomes a lion. The person that running late for work is a lion. Having a workmate that we don't necessarily get along with, that's a lion. Having a situation at home in our relationship, that's a lion. So we have so many lions in day-to-day life, that we're constantly stuck in this fight or flight. And that can be really detrimental on the body, and it can really affect our nervous system and affect our life, and have detrimental health effects. So I think, the first part of that is just to realize that we can actually take a step back, take a breath, and be like, actually, is this as big a thing as I think it is, or is my mind and body just trying to protect me because it thinks it's a lion.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big piece, because sometimes we get stuck in these loops, and I mean, I know about this, and I still get stuck in these loops all the time. But slowing down, taking a breath and going, okay, is this really what my mind's making out to me? Because a lot of the time in our mind, the thing is worse.
Yes.
Like a lot of the time, no one really likes doing dishes. Maybe a few weird people might like it. But it's usually worse doing the dishes in our head than actually doing it. Being like, I don't want to do them, and you actually do them, it's like, it actually wasn't that bad.
Yeah, or a water fast. Right.
Or a water fast, yeah. Although I'm definitely craving pizza today, so I'm definitely going to go and get a Cafe Nurture Peace Lovers pizza at the end of this. So I'm looking forward to that.
I'll join you.
Keeping me motivated. But yeah, so that's, I guess, like what I call paradigm neutral, right? So that can apply to any kind of spiritual endeavor or any person without delving into spiritual stuff.
That's to do with mindfulness. Is what you want your the people that you're teaching to get into that practice of mindfulness. Yeah, okay.
Just like, and mindfulness can be simply stopping for a moment and counting how many sounds that you can hear around you. And that gets you out of your head and out into the world. Or it can be like what you feel, so it can be your senses. But it could also just be an intention of focusing on your breath. So I have a YouTube channel. I actually have a free, anyone who's watching, I have a free Facebook group that I post at least 2 classes in there each week. So I've got guided meditations, guided yoga classes, and all that sort of stuff, and it's all free. So I post stuff in there. So there's, I just posted a video this week about Nadi Shodham, which is like a meditation where you block one nostril and breathe in and out the other one. But it's good because it keeps your hands busy.
Yeah,
so
that's
it keeps
just
your
Daniel
mind busy.
Cuming, sorry, if they want to check it out.
Yeah, I think you tagged me in this, so you just click on my name, and if you feel free to add me or send me a message, I can send you the link. But if you scroll down onto my Facebook page, it's there. But my website is runeyoga.org, so runeyoga.org. So you can see all the stuff that I do on there. I have podcasts and a bunch of other heaps of free stuff at the moment, especially. But yeah, so it can apply to anyone. But I think what you said about the different modalities, so I think the good thing about yoga as well is that it can tap you deeper into any other kind of spiritual endeavor you have. So whatever your belief system is, it can help you embody that. And what I mean by that is that a lot of things, like, you might intellectualize a concept, whatever your spiritual belief system is, you might think about it and intellectualize it a lot. But actually embodying it and feeling it is different, and that helps to get in touch with your physical body, because we experience, even though it's spiritual or mental, we still experience it in the body. Our mind, everything is filtered through the body. So yeah, I think people discount that, especially in the spiritual world. So I think it's quite important to get in touch with your body and your breath, and that can help you tap into whatever belief system you already have, or you can find ways of doing that. So for me, I've delved into a lot of different systems, but for me, more so the runes. So
I definitely want to know more about that. Is rune and rune yoga, and please.
Yeah, cool. So the runes originate from like Indo-European culture. So it's basically the indigenous European culture. That's where the runes are from. So people don't realize that the runes are actually interlaced into our day-to-day life. Our days of the week are named after Norse gods or runic gods. So we have Tuesday, which is named after Tyr's Day, Wednesday, Woden's Day, Thursday, Thor's Day, Friday, Frey's Day. So yeah, they're still named. Like a lot of our modern day symbols for things are derived from runes. Even our holidays, so like Christmas was derived from Yuletide, which was like an Indo-European holiday, and it was to celebrate the coming, because it was during winter, so it was the coming of the light. So they'd light up their trees to honor their ancestors and to represent the coming of the light back in, and they put gifts for their ancestors. And then when Catholicism and Christianity took over, they outlawed it, and then they had to basically do it inside. And so they used to cut down trees and do it inside, and that's where these traditions have come from. And then the church couldn't stamp it out, so they just decided to concrete over it and say that they were doing it for them rather than So there's a lot of like heathen and so like pagan and heathen essentially means like heathen translates to country folk. It translates to country folk, but it basically means like any belief system before before the church, before Catholicism, before Christianity. So like they were like the church would have considered like Hinduism pagan and things like that. So anything that's not, yeah. So it's a pretty broad term, but heathen specifically usually refers to indigenous Indo-European belief systems and culture. So yeah, so the Norse gods like Odin, Thor, all that sort of stuff that you see popping up in movies now, and they're making TV shows about the Vikings. That's where all the runes are derived from. So yeah, in a lot of English-speaking culture, that's our history, that's our ancestry, but not a lot of people know about it because, yeah, we think we're all Christian, and that is fine. Like, you know, Christianity's fine, but yeah, I like delving into the roots of things, and for some reason the heroism and like the culture around it is and it's quite diverse too. Like they have an honor system that's very like similar to like samurai. The Vikings, people don't think about that. I think the Vikings were probably just like smash and grab, but yeah, they have quite like an honorable whole belief system. They believe the soul is made up of 10 different parts, so the soul is multifaceted. They have this belief in this guardian entity that's similar to the guardian angel. So yeah, so weaving that into yoga, like, because yoga, once you get to a certain point with yoga, you tend to want more. You're like, okay, the physical is good, the mental and emotional, you know, processes are good, but now I'm open to something higher. So yeah, I mean, if you already have a belief system or a spiritual practice, that can help you delve deeper into that. But otherwise, yeah, you can find things, and like myself, like, because traditional yogic stuff is more kind of Hindu, tantric, that kind of like Vedic paradigm. So there's a whole mythology and all stuff around that. But I mean, for me, who was already doing runes and delving more into like Celtic culture and Indo-European culture, it's helped me to embody all those systems that I've used.
And could you give us like an example of how you'd incorporate rune, you know, a rune yoga? Or
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, usually the classes that I've done have been at festivals, so they're quite experiential. But essentially, a rune is a concept or a frequency, right? So there's a rune that would represent, there's a rune that represents money, right? But it's more than money. It represents the idea of mobile or transferable power. So you can have this concept of transferable power, but no one actually wants the transferable power. They want the thing that it brings them. So no one really wants money, right? People want the thing that money brings you. And there's this whole philosophy around that rune. So that's a frequency. There's another rune that represents, you know, physical health, that also represents like energy and vigor and vitality. So like, for example, tuning into a rune is like tuning into a frequency. So you can tune in and listen to what's already on that frequency. So when you tune into a rune, maybe about health, you might get insight about things that you should do for your health to make yourself better, or things that like in general, or you might even just feel a bit more energetic and vital. But on the other side, you could actually transmit on that frequency. So if a rune is a frequency, so the actual shape of the rune and the name of the rune and all that sort of stuff, the sound of the rune, there's a chant and a song for each rune.
And like a symbol as well?
Yeah, there's a symbol for each rune. But it's just like the phone number, right? So the symbol's like the phone number, but you look at the phone number and you don't think that that's the person. That's just how to get in touch with the person. So you see the shape of the rune and the concept and the name of the rune, and that's how you get in touch with the frequency of the rune. That's how you dial into the rune. And then once you learn to dial into the rune, you can listen, which is like divination, doing rune readings and stuff. Because most people think of runes and just rune readings. So that's like listening, asking a question and listening to the response on the frequency. But then you can also transmit your own stuff on the frequency. So the easiest way I can explain it is, if anyone's seen The Matrix. Have you seen The Matrix? Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, best movie.
Yeah, sweet. We can definitely still be friends. So The Matrix, if you haven't seen it, go see it. But essentially, I think of runes as the code to the Matrix, right? So once you learn to read the code, you're like, wow, I actually see the patterns. I see like how everything is constructed, and I see the patterns of the world and how everything moves, and I can almost see what's going to happen before it happens because I know the patterns. So that's rune readings, is learning the code. But once you learn the code, you can start to write the code. So you can actually, you know, be like, okay, well, I'm not feeling good at the moment. I want to make my health better. I might do this, write that code into it. I want to have more confidence in public speaking. I'm going to use that rune for like eloquence in public speaking and confidence to get better at public speaking. I want to meet like a right person to collaborate with on my work or something like that. So you can use runes to basically cast spells, essentially, right? So spelling is like writing. You're asking and tuning something into a frequency. So, yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So, how would you incorporate a rune into your life? To get a specific result that you're wanting? Would you hang it up somewhere, or would you, chant that or something like that?
Yeah, definitely. So it depends on what you're looking at doing. So definitely you can hang it somewhere. So for example, there's a rune that is all about craft and craftiness and skill. So you might use that rune, and as well as a rune for inspiration. So you'd use the craft for skill, craft for inspiration. I'm actually drawing them here.
Okay.
And then you could mix them together, draw them, and then you could hang it up in your workspace, in your artistic space, right?
Yeah.
So that way, subconsciously, every time you walk in, you realize that you've actually kind of like allocated or blessed that space with the idea of inspiration, creativity, and craft. And so that room now is dedicated to that idea. On the other side of it, say you're talking about the one for health.
Yeah.
So, used to do music gigs and stuff like that. Starting to do them again soon. But one day I was actually quite sick, and I had to do a performance the next night. And I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to be up for getting on stage and doing a gig. So I got a carrot, and I carved these health runes into it.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's
So
very creative.
it sounds funny, but so I carved the runes for health. I did like a little spell around it and put my intention into it, and then I ate the carrot, and I wasn't fully better, but I was good enough by the next afternoon that I could go and do the gig. So, and that's the beauty of it as well. Like, you don't know if there's anything supernatural going on, or it could be purely the placebo effect. So Joe Dispenza is amazing. You look up his books, Joe Dispenza, he talks about the placebo effect a lot. And I mean, that could be what magic is, right? It's just you're doing enough. Yeah, you're doing enough that you've convinced your subconscious that you're actually doing the thing. So, but yeah, on the other side of that, like, so to go through other things, so we've got like, drawing it, hanging it up. We've got like carving it and consuming it. But as well, you can do, like you said, chanting. So you, like I have a little thing that I might do if I'm nervous to go on stage to do a presentation or teach a class or something like that. There's a couple of runes that are around confidence and eloquence, and so I might just like mutter to them to myself, or just be like Suzy, so, and just like repeat that mantra until I feel it, and then once I feel it, I'm like, cool, I'm good to go on stage now. So I might just do that in the bathroom, or do that behind the stage before I go on stage, and then that's all you may need to do in that instance as well.
So basically, you're aligning yourself with the frequencies. Like, for example, the health has a certain frequency, and that specific room helps you align with that frequency.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just tuning into different concepts and frequencies, and finding a way to tap into that, and it's fun. I think that's.
I might give it a go. We could try some. So.
Oh yeah, definitely, man. We've got like another 8 days here, so we could definitely delve into some rune yoga.
And so you actually take runes and yoga, and you put them together.
Yeah.
So what does that look like?
So it looks different depending on what the intention is for the class, but generally it's a mix of moving first, setting the intention, and then having the intention flowing throughout the class. So coming back to that intention, having poses that resonate with that intention, and each rune also has like a yoga kind of movement. So it's Feihu, the shape looks like that, but you can actually like use Feihu's energy with this flowing motion of the hands. So it's moving in alignment with whatever runes you would be using for the intention for that class. Mm-hmm. So I've done some classes where the idea is to kind of like break down old parts of yourself and rebuild. I've had some that want to connect to something higher, some that might just be to promote creativity, so it's taking these concepts and actually putting into a class and an experiential thing. So a rune yoga class would have movement, it would have a lot of breath work, it would have sounding, so we would do a bit of chanting in between it. Sometimes it gets really primal and we might yell and stomp, and it's completely different depending on the class and the intention, and also who's there as well, because I've run the same kind of like what I call a rune yoga experience at different festivals, and it's been a completely different class because of the people there and the energy.
So you'll just tap into what that class is needing in that moment, and you'll apply the runes what you feel into it?
To a certain extent. Like sometimes I have done, like I did a Mind Body Spirit Festival, a few of them last year, and one of the classes that I did there was completely off the cuff. I completely made it up. I got up on stage and I was like, all right, I'm going to get all of you to randomly pick one of these 24 rune cards, whatever card and I was like, okay, what are we interested right now? Like, what are we like? And I just pulled random people out of the crowd and I was like, what do you want to do this for? Do you want it to do with love? Do you want it to do with like career? Do you want it to do with this? And then I just pieced it together, and then we did a completely improv rune yoga ceremony ritual thing. But on the other side of that, some are very, like, they have a very specific intention and general plan, but then there's space in between. So it's like signposts, right? So I was like, we have to start here, we have to finish here, and then we've got specific benchmarks or signposts we have to cross on the way there. But what happens in between those signposts is completely just whatever happens. Okay. So yeah, I have general ideas of classes usually. Okay, yeah.
Cool. What runes are relevant for you at the moment? What you've been tapping into?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess.
What that you'd like to tap into, or?
I mean, I'm reconnecting with all of them at the moment, but I guess there's like the concepts of rebirth. So there's definitely one about constant movement and rebirth, Berkano, and it's about how everything is always moving and always becoming and always changing, and like that, the destruction of something makes way for the next one. And there's another rune, Hagalaz, which is basically about, it translates to catastrophe. Yeah. So people would think that, stay away from that rune. Hagalaz is no one wants catastrophe, but often we need a catastrophe to facilitate change. So sometimes, like, we might be, you might have a house, you might start off with a small house, and then you're like, oh, actually I could use a room for this. So you put that room onto the end of the house, and you're like, oh, I could use a second level, I'm going to put the second level on top of my house. Oh, I could use like a nice garden here. And then it's kind of just like hodgepodge added, but the original structure wasn't made for all these add-ons. So eventually you start building up, and then the house is getting all rickety, and you're constantly just maintaining this house that wasn't built for your current vision. Yeah. So Hagalaz is the rune Hagalaz is the idea of sweeping, like, get rid of all that, but laying the seeds and foundation for new. So it's like clearing all out, but laying the seeds and foundation for something new to grow in line with the new vision. Okay. So rather than having that, everything that you learnt from building that house, you're like, well, instead, I'm just going to, like, build the one room bigger to incorporate that, and I'm going to have the garden out here because when I put it on that side of the house it wasn't working, there was no sunlight, or you know what I mean.
Are you using that because you're fasting now and it's kind of like tearing renewal and detox and tearing everything down?
Yeah, partly, yeah. I mean, I've been going through like a pretty heavy few months myself, so I feel like my whole last few months has been all Hagalaz and Berkano and just rebirth and change and destruction and redevelopment and refining myself. But yeah, definitely during this fast, I feel like the whole world is going through a Hagalaz right now. I feel like the whole world is experiencing this big kind of like catastrophe, but it's laying the seeds of renewal and change. But definitely, I think that's kind of what drew me to this fast, because I think at the moment, while I'm delving into this stuff, and also having the space, right? Like, I haven't been able to just take 10 days off. I can't remember the last time I could just take 10 days off. I think during this fast, it's going to like strip back everything to our like bare self. And
what are your intentions for this fast? Like, is there anything specific that you'd like to get out of it?
I want to reconnect with like my childlike self, I guess, but also want to connect with, I just want to strip back all the layers that don't serve me. I want to reconnect to what's really important and see if things that I've been holding on to for a long time are still even relevant, because I feel like I've been holding on to a lot of beliefs, a lot of patterns, a lot of behaviors that don't serve me anymore, that like are just I'm stuck in because I think that that's me, but it's not. Like, me is like, when I look at what I think me is, it's just really like this stripped back awareness. Like, there's definitely parts that, but that's the thing, right? Like, if I look back at what I was interested in as a kid, what I was passionate about, what I was interested in as a teenager, what I was interested, like as I got older, and see if there's a correlation between like what I was interested in then, what I'm interested in now, and if not, like why am I not doing certain things that brought me joy then, and if I'm still doing them now, then they must really be important.
And music was a big piece for that.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's what you're reconnecting to more.
Yeah, so not many people who know me on the Sunshine Coast know that I actually used to produce music as a job for a while. So I had a home studio in Brisbane that I used to just produce mainly hip hop from, but a broad range of music. But then I overdosed on it, and I just ended up doing it too much and doing the mixing and mastering for a lot of artists that I didn't resonate with, and music I wasn't interested with, and I just lost the love for it, and I stopped making my own music. So now I've just started, with all this stuff going on, reconnected with my own music. So I've been writing, so I write lyrics. So I went up to Foxy's at Coolum a few weeks back and did the open mic there, so just did some spoken word poetry. But yeah, I also produce music as well, so I'm going to be producing a hip-hop album actually.
Epic.
So that's going to be done hopefully in the next few months. So yeah, that's been amazing, and that's interesting. Hey, like I feel like a lot of people are in the same boat where they're refining passions that they've stopped because they're like, oh no, I haven't got time for this, or I shouldn't be doing this, or if it's really important to them, like often it's the thing that we do least because it's what we're afraid of. Like I'm afraid of making music because it's so important to me. Like I'm afraid of failing at it. I'm afraid of it not being up to my standards. I don't know. It's stupid though. But we often overlook the things that are most important to us and bring us the most joy because it scares the shit out of us.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that. Are you interested in sound healing at all? Getting into that?
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, so I mean, I've got a steel pan hand drum called a Ravast, and I sometimes take that to yoga classes with me and just do a little bit of kind of like sound or chanting and stuff after the yoga classes. But it's something I'm definitely building my confidence with as well, because it's something I've been doing for a little while by myself, because a lot of the runes have chanting and stuff, and I've always been into music in general, but to do it publicly is definitely out of my comfort zone, and it's something that I've only really...
We're performing publicly, or
I guess performing it publicly, just wondering how I would incorporate it into the performances and performing it publicly.
Well, have you got a rune that would help you with the performance anxiety? Or
I do, but not for music, so that's probably a different rune that I can make, so that's a really good idea.
You can make it?
Yeah, definitely I can make it.
You can make your own rune?
Really? Yeah. So I don't usually use one rune when I want to do a spell. So usually I mix at least two runes together. So like for example, there's like one that means eloquence and of speech, and there's one that means like kind of like strong and solidity and stuff like that. So I might use a strong solidity for confidence, and then that answers for eloquence, and so I'm like confident and eloquent, ready to stand up and go. So you would mix the runes together and make what they call a bind rune. Yeah, so it's it's just a mixture. So that's a unique looking rune that means a specific intention. Yeah, so
cool.
It's a good idea. I'll make a bind rune for confidence in doing my music.
Brilliant. I think that pretty much wraps it up, but I would just be interested in knowing, what's going on in your life, like what's happening in the future for you, where do you see yourself moving, in what direction, what do you want to create, what do you want to, inspire people with, what's the next step for you?
So currently I'm enjoying a bit of time off. So I was running a yoga teacher training in Bali in June, but that's been delayed till next year. So there's 4 spots left for that. So I'm running a level 1 yoga teacher training through Ritual Embodiment is the yoga school. So if you're interested, just send me a message. I can send you details about that. So it'll be in June next year. But yeah, my focus now is taking people out of their day-to-day life into retreat situations, and obviously you can become a yoga teacher with me if that's what you want. Otherwise, just doing like a retreat would be like a whole new experience and delving deeper into yourself and within certain modalities.
Sorry, just quickly, so you run retreats and you run teacher training, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yoga teacher training.
Tell us the difference between those.
Okay, so yoga teacher training program, if you come in the immersion version, is 21 days. So that's 3 weeks of doing basically nothing but yoga. You would delve into yourself. It'll be a full immersive experience. You'll definitely come out a different person, but you will come out a fully fledged qualified yoga teacher at the end of it. A retreat would be more so focused on an intention or an experience without actually learning how to teach. I mean, you still learn similar things on some yoga retreats, but a retreat more so is just all about nourishing you, more about an experiential process rather than actually learning a system.
How many days is that, the retreat?
Generally, they're about 6 to 8 days,
Okay, cool.
depending on the retreat. Yeah, so different retreats. But there's nothing lined up at the moment, but not for the rest of this year, just because everything's has been moved to next year at the moment. But yeah, if you are interested, I can keep you in the loop. But yeah, other than that, running yoga teacher training on the Sunshine Coast starting next year as well. And I've got Rune Yoga as a modality in the process of being created and registered. So people will be able to become Rune Yoga teachers eventually as well. So I'm going to be doing a lot more festivals.
Are there many
again
people
next
doing
year.
that?
No one. Yeah. So
Wow.
I've basically created the system from a lot of my own experience, from other systems that I've delved into. I mean, there's similar stuff out there, but I feel like the way that I've combined it all and created it all. You're looking at the founder of Rune Yoga. So
That's very cool.
so it's still for the last year or two I've been experimenting, obviously teaching it in class form. Well, probably the last 4 years, but actually publicly in festivals I've been teaching it the last year and a half. And just going and testing it out and just seeing what works, obviously in a grand scheme of things, and and just teaching a few other little techniques and stuff to people, hosting regular Rune Yoga classes. And
so basically you just want to be doing more retreats, more yoga teaching, getting into music, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and definitely more online stuff. I was moving more of my stuff online anyway, but all this COVID situation is quickened that. So I run like an online Rune course at the moment. I'm running free weekly classes through my Facebook group. So you just send me a link if you can't find it. Otherwise, go to my Facebook timeline. All the links are there for the free Facebook group. There's meditation, yoga classes every week, all that stuff. Obviously you'll see music from me as well. My album coming out later this year.
Epic. Sounds very exciting. Well, I think that wraps it up. And thank you so much, my man.
Yeah, thank you, brother.
That was a great chat. It was my first little interview, and I think it went pretty well.
I think it went really well.
And I could listen to this guy speak all day. He's got a lot to share. But thank you so much, my man.
Yeah, thank you, brother. Thanks for having me, and thank
cool.
you everyone that watched.
Thanks, guys. Okay.